The day I turned 16, my stepmother Vera handed me a garbage bag with my clothes and shoved me out the door. Not a suitcase, not a backpack, but a black plastic garbage bag, like I was trash being taken to the curb. "Your dead father left us nothing but debt because of you," she spat in my face, her breath smelling like the menthol cigarettes she chain-smoked every morning. $500,000 in medical bills from trying to save you as a baby. You bankrupted this family before you could even walk. I stood on that porch in Clearwater, Kansas, holding that garbage bag while my stepbrother Damon watched from the window, smirking. My stepsister Bridget wouldn't even look at me. The woman who'd raised me since I was 3 years old looked at me with such disgust, you'd think I'd committed murder instead of just existing. 20 years later, I was mopping floors at Second Chance's halfway house in Denver when Ruth, my supervisor, knocked on the supply closet door. "Jonah, there's some lawyer from New York on line 2. Says he's been looking for you for 3 years, something about an inheritance." I almost laughed. Inheritance? From who? With what money? My family had made it crystal clear that I was worth less than nothing. But I took the call anyway, expecting some scam about a Nigerian prince or a long-lost relative who needed my bank account information. "Mr. Jonah Reeves?" The voice was professional, older, with that particular Manhattan accent that makes every sentence sound expensive. "My name is Harrison Caldwell from Caldwell Associates. I represent the estate of Constance Atticus Reeves." "Never heard of her. Wrong person. Please don't hang up. You are the son of William Atticus Reeves, correct?" My hand froze on the receiver. Nobody knew my father's middle name. It wasn't on his death certificate, wasn't in his obituary, wasn't anywhere except my original birth certificate that I'd only seen once when replacing my ID at age 25. Atticus. Such a strange, distinctive name that I'd never forgotten it. "How do you know that name?" "Because Constance Atticus Reeves was your grandmother, your father's mother, and she left you everything. My father was an orphan. He didn't have a mother. Your father ran away from home at 18 and never looked back. But Constance never stopped looking for him. When she found out what happened to you, what your stepmother did, she changed her entire will. Mr. Reeves, you've inherited approximately $89 million. The mop handle slipped from my hand and clattered on the floor. 89 million. The words didn't make sense. I'd spent 20 years sleeping under bridges, eating from dumpsters, believing I was so worthless that my own family couldn't afford to keep me. I'd believed my very existence was a debt that could never be repaid. "But there's more," Caldwell continued, his voice gentle like he was trying not to spook a wild animal. "Your stepmother lied to you. Your father didn't die in debt. He was actually quite wealthy when he died. He owned 3 hardware stores. He had life insurance, he had investments. Your medical bills were fully covered by insurance and a trust from your maternal grandparents. You never cost your family a single penny." The room started spinning. I grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. "That's impossible. Vera said the bills were $500,000. She showed me the notices. She said collectors called every day." Mrs. Hutchins liquidated approximately $2 million in assets after your father's death. She told the probate court she was the sole beneficiary. Then she created an elaborate fiction about medical debt to justify what she'd done. Mr. Reeves, you were never a burden. You were a victim of theft and fraud. $2 million. The number echoed in my head. $2 million that should have been mine, that should have paid for college, for a home, for a life. Instead, I got a garbage bag and 20 years of believing I was worthless. "We need to meet in person," Caldwell said. "There are documents to sign, but more importantly, there's a letter from your grandmother. She wanted me to read it to you personally, to make sure you understood that you were loved, that you were always loved, even when it felt like the whole world had thrown you away." I thought about 16-year-old me, standing on that porch, convinced I'd destroyed my family just by being born. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed awake wondering what was so wrong with me that my own stepmother couldn't stand to look at me. I thought about every job I'd worked, every dollar I'd saved, trying to prove I wasn't expensive, wasn't a burden, wasn't too much. And now this lawyer was telling me it was all a lie, every single word of it. My name is Jonah Reeves. At 16, I was thrown away like garbage by a woman who stole my inheritance and then blamed me for the theft. At 36, I discovered that my worth was never measured in dollars and cents, but in the love of a father who died trying to protect me, and a grandmother who spent her final years trying to find me. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who throw us away are actually setting us free to discover who we really are. And who I really am, it turns out, is nobody's garbage and everybody's proof that you can't put a price on a human soul. My name is Jonah Reeves, and until 3 months ago, I believed I was the reason my family lived in poverty. Every morning, I wake up in my studio apartment in Denver, a simple place with creaking floors and windows that don't quite shut all the way, but it's mine. After 20 years of sleeping wherever I could find shelter, having my own key still feels like a miracle. I work at Second Chance's halfway house, helping other people who've lived on the streets find their way back to something resembling normal life. Most days, I'm good at my job because I understand what it's like to believe you're beyond saving. Growing up in Clearwater, Kansas, our house was a constant reminder of everything we didn't have. The roof leaked every time it rained, and we'd scramble to put buckets under the drips. The furnace broke every winter, and we'd huddle around space heaters that Vera bought from yard sales. The kitchen table had one short leg that we propped up with a phone book from 1998. Everything in that house was broken, patched, or borrowed, and according to Vera, it was all my fault. "Your birth nearly killed you," Vera would tell me while serving dinner, always giving me the smallest portion. Complications during delivery, emergency surgery, 3 months in the NICU. Your father had to sell his business, mortgage the house, borrow from everyone we knew. $500,000, Jonah. That's what saving your life cost this family. She had a way of saying my name that made it sound like a curse. Even now, 36 years old, and 3 months into knowing the truth, I sometimes hear her voice when someone says my name. That sharp edge of resentment cutting through 2 syllables. My father, William Reeves, died in a car accident when I was 3 years old. The only memory I have of him isn't even real. It's just the photograph Vera kept on the mantel. In it, he's holding baby me in a hospital room, machines and wires visible in the background. He looks exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed and his clothes wrinkled, but he's smiling at me like I'm the most precious thing in the world. Vera would point to that picture whenever she wanted to hurt me. "Look how tired he was. Look what you put him through. He worked himself to death trying to pay those bills." Vera had married my father when I was 18 months old. She already had 2 children from her first marriage. Damon was 5 years older than me, built like a linebacker by the time he hit 14, and he never let me forget that I was the reason he couldn't have the things other kids had. "Mom says we could have had a pool," he'd tell me, pushing me into lockers at school. "Could have gone to Disney World. Could have had a lot of things if Dad hadn't wasted everything on keeping you alive." Bridget was 3 years older than me, quieter than Damon, but no less resentful. She had our father's gentle eyes, which made her coldness hurt more. "I know it's not technically your fault," she told me once when I was 12 and she was 15. "But every time Mom cries about money, every time I have to wear hand-me-downs to school, every time Damon talks about dropping out because we can't afford college, I think about that $500,000. What our lives could have been if you hadn't needed it. I learned to make myself small, invisible, unnecessary. I ate only when others had finished. I wore Damon's old clothes until they literally fell apart, held together with safety pins and hope. I didn't ask for school supplies, birthday presents, or new shoes, even when mine had holes that let in snow. At 14, I got a job washing dishes at Murphy's Diner, working every day after school and all weekend. I'd come home at midnight reeking of grease and industrial soap and hand my paycheck to Vera without keeping a penny. "It's not even close to enough," she'd say, tucking the money into her purse, "but at least you're trying to pay us back." The thing about growing up believing you're a debt is that you never feel like you deserve anything good. When teachers praised my work, I assumed they were just being nice. When a girl in my class asked me to the winter dance, I said no because I couldn't afford to rent a suit and didn't want to embarrass her. When Mr. Murphy offered to promote me to server where I'd make better tips, I turned it down because I didn't think I deserved to move up. I existed in a constant state of apology, sorry for breathing, sorry for taking up space, sorry for costing so much before I even knew what money was. That weight shaped everything about me, curved my spine with its burden, made me walk through the world like someone who'd stolen something precious and was waiting to be caught. The morning of my 16th birthday started with Vera banging on my bedroom door at 5:30 in the morning. "Get up. You think birthdays mean you get to sleep in? Breakfast doesn't make itself." I dragged myself out of bed, still wearing the dishwasher uniform from Murphy's Diner that I'd fallen asleep in after my shift. The January cold cut through our drafty house, and I could see my breath as I stumbled to the kitchen. I made scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee for everyone, the same breakfast I'd made every morning since I was 12. Damon came down first, already dressed in his varsity jacket, and ate without acknowledging me. Bridget followed, complaining about having to wear the same dress to school that she'd worn last week. Vera sat at the head of the table, smoking her menthol cigarette and reading collection notices. "Happy birthday to me," I muttered under my breath, washing their dishes. "What was that?" Vera's voice was sharp. "Nothing, just talking to myself." "Good. Hurry up or you'll miss the bus." I grabbed my backpack, the one held together with duct tape because the zipper had broken 2 years ago, and headed for the door. That's when Vera stood up, holding something behind her back. "Actually, Jonah, wait a minute." For one stupid, hopeful second, I thought maybe she'd gotten me something for my birthday. Maybe just a card or even just a kind word. Instead, she pulled out a black garbage bag already full. "What's that?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. "Your things. You're 16 now, legal age to work full-time in Kansas. Time for you to go." The words didn't make sense at first. They just hung in the air between us like a foreign language. "Go where?" "I don't care where, just not here. But this is my home, you're my mother." She laughed then, harsh and bitter. "I'm not your mother. Your mother died giving birth to you, starting this whole mess. I'm just the idiot who married your father thinking he owned 3 successful hardware stores, only to find out after he died that he'd sold everything, mortgaged everything, borrowed everything to pay for your medical bills. I'll quit school, I'll work more hours, I'll give you everything I earn. You already give me everything, and it's not enough. It will never be enough. Do you understand that, Jonah? You owe this family $500,000. At minimum wage, working every hour of your life, you'll never pay that back." Damon appeared in the doorway, grinning. "Mom's been planning this for months. We're moving to California next week. Aunt Patricia got Mom a job at her real estate company. Fresh start, no baggage." "I'm not baggage. I'm your brother. Stepbrother," Damon corrected. "And not even that anymore." Bridget came down the stairs then, wouldn't look at me. "Mom, maybe we should wait until summer. Let him finish the school year at least." "We've waited 13 years, Vera snapped. 13 years of collection calls, 13 years of, "We're sorry, your card has been declined." 13 years of watching other families take vacations and buy new cars while we scramble to keep the lights on. "I'm done waiting." She shoved the garbage bag into my chest so hard I stumbled backward. "Your father chose you over this family. He looked at the bills, looked at us, and chose to destroy our future to save yours. Well, he's dead now, and I'm choosing us." Please, I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. It's January. It's freezing outside. Where am I supposed to go? Should have thought about that before you cost us everything. She moved to close the door, but I put my hand out to stop it. This is illegal. You can't just abandon a minor. I'll call the police. Vera leaned in close, and I could smell the cigarette smoke on her breath. Go ahead. Tell them how we fed you, clothed you, and housed you for 13 years while drowning in debt you created. Tell them about the collection agencies that call every day. Tell them about the liens on this house. See if they care about one ungrateful kid who won't leave when asked. I'll tell them you're lying about the debt. With what proof? I have medical bills and collection notices, bankruptcy papers. What do you have? Nothing. I had nothing. That's what I thought, she said. Now get off my porch before I call the police myself and tell them you're trespassing. The door slammed in my face. I heard the deadbolt turn, then the chain lock slide into place. Through the window, I could see Damon high-fiving Vera. Bridget had disappeared upstairs. I stood on that porch for 3 hours, certain someone would open the door. Certain this was just Vera trying to scare me, teach me a lesson about gratitude or responsibility or something. But when the locksmith van pulled up and a man got out with a toolbox, I finally understood this was real. You need to move, kid, the locksmith said, not unkindly. I've got work to do. I picked up my garbage bag and walked away from the only home I'd ever known. My breath forming clouds in the freezing air, wearing a thin jacket and shoes with holes in them, carrying my life in the same kind of bag people use for their trash. That first night behind Murphy's Diner nearly killed me. The temperature dropped to 12 degrees, and I wrapped myself in every piece of clothing from that garbage bag, but it wasn't enough. My fingers went numb first, then my toes, then that dangerous, sleepy feeling that means your body is giving up. I kept moving, doing jumping jacks behind the dumpster like a crazy person, knowing if I stopped, I might not start again. Mr. Murphy found me the next morning when he came to open at 5 o'clock. Jesus Christ, Jonah, what the hell are you doing back here? My lips were too cold to form words properly. He dragged me inside, sat me next to the industrial oven, and made me drink hot coffee until I could feel my fingers again. When I finally told him what happened, his face went through several emotions before settling on rage. That woman threw you out? In January? You're 16 years old? She said I cost too much, the medical bills from when I was a baby. Mr. Murphy let me sleep in the storage room for a week, bringing me blankets from his house and leftover food from the kitchen. But then his wife found out. We can't harbor a runaway, Frank. We could lose everything. The state could shut us down. He needs to go to foster care or back home. I can't go back, I told them. And foster care means questions, means court, means maybe they send me back to Vera anyway. So I ran. I took my garbage bag and disappeared into the underbelly of Kansas, then Colorado, learning the geography of homelessness. Every city has its hidden spaces where the thrown-away people gather. Under bridges, the concrete holds heat longer than you'd think. Behind 24-hour laundromats, the vents blow warm air. Church doorways offer protection from wind, and most priests won't call the cops if you're gone by morning. I learned to find day labor at construction sites, no questions asked if you worked hard and kept quiet. I learned which restaurants threw out perfectly good food and when. I learned to shower at truck stops, sleep in shifts to avoid being robbed, and never look too comfortable anywhere because comfort makes you visible, and visible makes you vulnerable. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold or even the fear. It was the erosion of self that happens when everyone looks through you like you don't exist. You start to believe maybe you don't. Maybe you really are garbage like the bag Vera handed you. Maybe this is what you deserve for costing so much, for being so expensive to keep alive. At 19, I got arrested for vagrancy in Denver. The judge gave me a choice, jail or a program at St. Benedict's Mission. I chose the mission, thinking it was just another shelter. But Father Timothy, who ran it, saw something in me that I'd forgotten existed. "You're smart," he said, after I helped him fix their ancient computer system. "Why aren't you in school?" "School costs money, everything costs money, I already cost too much." He made me tell him the whole story, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Your stepmother was wrong," he finally said. "The only thing you cost was love, and that's supposed to be free." Father Timothy helped me get my GED, then convinced me to take community college classes. I was 25, living in the mission's transitional housing, when I finally got a real job with a paycheck that didn't come in cash at the end of the day. Warehouse work wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and steady was everything when you'd spent 9 years never knowing where you'd sleep. I saved obsessively, terrified of needing anything from anyone. Even when I could afford my own apartment, I stayed in the mission another year, banking every penny. Other residents thought I was crazy. "Why you living here if you got money?" they'd ask. "Because I need to prove something," I'd tell them, though I couldn't articulate what. At 30, I applied for a job at Second Chance's halfway house. The director, Ruth, was a former nun with eyes that could see through anyone's facade. "Why do you want to work here?" she asked during the interview. "Because I understand what it's like to believe you're worthless. I want to help people remember they're not." She hired me as a janitor. I worked my way up to intake coordinator, then counselor, getting my certification at night school. Every person who came through those doors carrying their possessions in trash bags, I saw myself. Every teenager thrown out by their family, I saw that 16-year-old kid on Vera's porch. I built a life, small and careful, like someone assembling a house of cards in a windstorm. I dated occasionally, but never let anyone close enough to ask about my family. When coworkers talked about their childhood memories, I changed the subject. When clients asked how I understood so well what they were going through, I'd say, "We all have our struggles," and leave it at that. I never looked for Vera, Damon, or Bridget. What would be the point? They'd made their choice, and I'd survived it. But sometimes, late at night in my small apartment, I'd wonder if they ever thought about me. If they ever wondered whether I'd lived or died after they changed those locks. If they ever felt guilty about throwing away a 16-year-old boy in the middle of winter with nothing but garbage bag and a lifetime of false debt to carry. 3 days after that phone call, I was sitting in Harrison Caldwell's Manhattan office, 40 floors above Park Avenue. The elevator ride alone cost more than my monthly rent, all marble and mirrors, and soft classical music. Caldwell's assistant offered me coffee in a cup so delicate I was afraid to hold it, my warehouse worker hands suddenly feeling too rough for this world of wealth and refinement. Caldwell himself was in his 70s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His office looked like a movie set, all dark wood and leather-bound books, with a view of the city that made my stomach drop. He pulled out a thick folder and placed it between us like he was handling something sacred. "Before we begin," he said, "I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you might be difficult to hear. Would you like to take a moment? I've been homeless for 20 years because my stepmother said I bankrupted my family. Whatever you have to tell me can't be worse than what I've already lived through." He nodded slowly, then opened the folder. The first thing he pulled out was a photograph. It was my father, young, maybe 20, standing next to a severe-looking woman dripping in pearls and judgment. They were in front of a mansion that looked like something from a magazine. "This is your grandmother, Constance Atticus Reeves, and your father when he was 20. The Atticus family built their fortune in mining, starting in the 1890s. By the time your father was born, they were worth approximately $300 million. I stared at the photo. My father, who Vera said died broke, standing in front of a mansion. That's impossible. Your father was raised with everything money could buy. Private schools, yacht clubs, a trust fund that would have made him wealthy for life. But Constance was controlling, demanding. She had his entire life planned out, including who he would marry. When he was 18, he met your mother, Emma, at a charity event. She was working as a server. Caldwell pulled out another photo. A young woman with bright eyes and a genuine smile, wearing a catering uniform. Constance forbade the relationship. So your father made a choice. He walked away from everything. Changed his name from Atticus Reeves to just Reeves, took the money he had in his personal account, and disappeared with Emma to Kansas. He gave up hundreds of millions of dollars for my mother? He gave it up for love, and he never regretted it, according to what he told friends. He built a life in Kansas, opened hardware stores, married your mother. When she died in childbirth and you needed extensive medical care, yes, it was expensive, but not the way Vera told you. Caldwell pulled out bank statements, insurance documents, medical records. Your maternal grandparents had set up a trust for your medical care. They were comfortable people, not wealthy like the Atticus family, but they had saved. Insurance covered most of your NICU stay. The total out-of-pocket expense for your father was approximately $30,000, which he paid off within a year. $30,000. Vera said $500,000, she showed. Me bills, collection notices. Fabricated. After your father died, Vera had access to all his papers. She created false documents, probably destroyed the real ones, but we found the truth in hospital records, insurance company archives. Caldwell pulled out more papers. Your father owned 3 successful hardware stores. He had life insurance policies totaling $1 million. He had investment account and savings, even a college fund he'd started for you. Total value, at the time of his death, approximately $2 million. My hands were shaking. What happened to it? Your father died without a will. He was only 29, thought he had time. Kansas law favored the surviving spouse. Vera liquidated everything within 6 months. Sold the stores, cashed the policies, emptied the accounts. She told the probate court she needed it for your medical debts and family expenses. No one questioned a widow with 3 young children. She stole $2 million and then threw me out for being expensive. She did more than that, Caldwell said gently. We traced the money. A week after liquidating your father's assets, she bought a house in California. Cash purchase, $400,000. She set up college funds for Damon and Bridget, $50,000 each. She invested the rest. By the time she threw you out, that $2 million had grown to nearly $3 million. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. She had $3 million and gave me a garbage bag? I'm afraid so. But here's what Vera didn't know. Your grandmother had been watching. When your father died, she hired private investigators to keep tabs on you, hoping to reconnect someday. They reported everything. How Vera treated you, the lies about the debt, and especially what happened when you turned 16. Caldwell pulled out a report. January 15th, subject was expelled from family home on 16th birthday. Given belongings in garbage bag. Temperature 12 degrees. Subject attempted to remain on porch for approximately 3 hours. Family changed locks. Subject last seen walking toward commercial district. Your grandmother tried to find you immediately, Caldwell continued. She sent investigators, offered rewards, but you'd disappeared completely. It took her years to accept that you'd either died or didn't want to be found. The guilt nearly destroyed her. He pulled out one more document. She rewrote her will 3 years before her death. Everything goes to you. The entire Atticus fortune, all the real estate, the investments, the mining rights. After taxes and distributions to charities she supported, you're inheriting approximately $89 million. Why? She never even met me. Because she realized too late what really mattered. She spent 40 years estranged from her son over money and control, and when she learned what that same money had done to you, how it had been stolen and used to justify throwing you away, she couldn't bear it. Caldwell handed me an envelope, sealed with wax. She left you this. I opened Constance's letter with shaking hands. the wax seal crumbling under my fingers. Her handwriting was elegant but shaky, like someone fighting against time to get the words down. My dear Jonah, I failed your father, and by extension, I failed you. My pride and need for control drove away the only family I had. When I learned what that woman did to you, how she used my son's death to enrich herself while casting you out like garbage, I knew I had to make it right. Your father called me once, after you were born. He said you were perfect, that holding you made every fight we'd ever had seem meaningless. He wanted to reconcile, to bring you to meet me. I refused. I was too proud, too stubborn. A week later, he was dead. I cannot undo my mistakes, but I can ensure that you never again have to question your worth. You were loved, desperately, by a father who would have given anything for you. You are not a burden, you never were. Use this fortune to heal, to help others as I know you've been doing, and to build the life you deserve. And perhaps forgive an old woman who learned too late what truly matters. Your grandmother, Constance. I sat in that expensive office, holding an $89 million inheritance, and cried for the first time in 20 years. Not for the money, but for the truth. My father hadn't bankrupted himself saving me. He'd loved me. My grandmother, who I never knew existed, had spent her final years trying to find me, to make things right. I wasn't garbage. I had never been garbage. The first thing I did with the money wasn't buy a mansion or a sports car. I went back to Second Chance's halfway house and doubled their funding. Then I established a new program specifically for homeless youth who'd been thrown away by their families. We called it Atticus House, after my father's middle name that had unlocked this entire truth. I hired private investigators of my own, not for revenge, but for answers. They found Vera living in Malibu, in a $4 million house with an ocean view. Damon had become a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. Bridget ran a high-end boutique in Santa Monica. They'd built beautiful, successful lives on the foundation of my father's stolen money and my manufactured shame. My lawyer said we could sue them. Fraud, theft, emotional distress, child abandonment. The list was long, and the evidence was overwhelming. But Ruth at the halfway house said something that stopped me. Jonah, they have to wake up every morning knowing what they did. They threw away a child for money they already had. That's a prison no court can impose. Instead of suing, I sent them each a letter with a single photo. Me at the grand opening of Atticus House, surrounded by young people who'd been thrown away just like me. Kids whose parents said they were too expensive, too difficult, too different. I wrote only one line. I know the truth now, and I forgive you. Bridget called me within an hour of receiving the letter, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. Jonah, I swear I didn't know. Mom told us the same story about the debts. She showed us the bills. I thought we were poor because of the medical costs. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I believed her. We talk now, carefully rebuilding something that was stolen from us. She told me that after high school, she'd wondered why they suddenly had money for her college, why her mother could afford a house in California. Mom said she'd been saving secretly, that she'd inherited something from a distant relative. I never questioned it. Damon never reached out, but Bridget told me he'd gone into therapy after receiving my letter. He can't handle what he did to you, she said. He remembers every cruel thing he said, every time he hurt you. He says he became a plastic surgeon to fix people's outsides because he can't fix his own insides. Vera never responded directly, but I heard from Bridget that she'd been having panic attacks, convinced I was going to expose her, ruin her reputation in her wealthy Malibu circles. She'd told everyone there that she was a widow who'd struggled to raise 3 children alone after her husband's tragic death. The truth would destroy the fiction she'd built her entire life on. I won't expose her. Living with the truth is punishment enough. Every luxury she enjoys, every dollar she spends, is marked with the memory of a 16-year-old boy standing on her porch in the freezing cold, begging not to be thrown away. The real inheritance wasn't the money. though it has allowed me to help hundreds of young people find homes, jobs, and hope. The real inheritance was learning that I was loved. My father didn't choose saving me over his family's future. He simply loved me, the way parents are supposed to love their children, without conditions or cost calculations. Last week, a 16-year-old girl arrived at Atticus' house carrying her belongings in a trash bag. Her parents had thrown her out for getting pregnant. As I helped her settle into her room, a real room with dignity and safety, she asked me, "Why do you care what happens to me? You don't even know me." I thought about my father, who gave up a fortune for love. I thought about my grandmother, who spent her last years trying to undo the damage money had caused. I thought about 20 years of believing I was worthless, and 3 months of knowing I never was. Because, I told her, someone once convinced me I was too expensive to love. It took me 20 years to learn they were wrong. You're not too expensive, too difficult, or too much of anything. You're exactly enough, exactly as you are. And that room you're standing in, that's not charity. That's justice. It's what you deserve simply for being human. She started crying then, and I remembered what it felt like to be 16 and thrown away, to believe you're garbage. But I also remembered what it feels like to learn the truth. That love doesn't keep receipts. That worth isn't measured in dollars. That sometimes the people who throw us away are actually setting us free to find families who choose us. My name is Jonah Reeves. I am my father's son, my grandmother's legacy, and nobody's burden. At 16, I was handed a garbage bag and told I was worthless. At 36, I learned I was worth more than money could ever measure. Not because of the inheritance, but because I survived long enough to learn the truth. Every thrown-away person is priceless. The $89 million is nice. It builds buildings, funds programs, changes lives. But the truth that I was desperately loved by a father who died too young and a grandmother who learned too late. That rebuilt my soul. And now I make sure every kid who walks through the doors of Atticus' house learns that same truth without having to wait 20 years for it. Vera stole my inheritance, but she couldn't steal what really mattered: my father's love, my grandmother's redemption, and my ability to turn 20 years of pain into purpose. Every young person living at Atticus' house is proof that being thrown away doesn't mean you're garbage. Sometimes it just means you are too valuable for small people to recognize your worth. That's the real inheritance. Not money, but truth. And truth, it turns out, can rebuild a life that lies destroyed. It can transform a garbage bag into a symbol not of worthlessness, but of survival. It can turn 20 years of homelessness into a lifetime of giving others homes, and it can teach a boy who was told he cost too much that the only thing worth spending is love, and love, real love, never sends a bill. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt worthless or thrown away, please share this video with someone who needs to hear that they matter. Leave a comment below about a time when you discovered your own worth despite what others said. And subscribe to this channel for more stories about people who turned their deepest pain into their greatest purpose. Remember, you're not too expensive to love. You're priceless, and don't let anyone convince you otherwise.